thanks to all the attendees, and thanks to these amazing panelists. And we'll start with a few intros. So my name is Christina Flashen. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the CEO of Pandium and the co-founder of the SaaS Ecosystem Alliance, which is where this lovely panel came from today. We're really excited to welcome an amazing group of folks to chat through integration prioritization for ecosystems, one of my favorite topics. So this panel is scheduled to run until 1:40, and we have some great questions that folks have already sent in, but we'll also do about 10 minutes at the end for audience questions. So if you do have questions, feel free to use the Q&A function in Zoom throughout the event, and at the end, we'll get through as many as we can. So without further ado, let's do some intros. Maybe if you can say who you are, where you work, and what your role is. And we'll start with Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Christina. Really excited to be here today. So my name is Chris Lavoie, and I lead tech partnerships at Gorgias. We're an e-commerce help desk solution to help D2C brands deliver exceptional customer experience to their customers. And in my role, I'm responsible for both the commercial aspect of tech partnerships and integrations, but also earlier on in the pipeline of actually scoping and identifying great partners who, if we integrate with, presents both a product value add and a big commercial opportunity as well.
Awesome, thank you. Richard.
Yeah, hey everyone, Rich O'Connell. I work on the platform partnerships team at Atlassian. Atlassian is a company that builds tools for teams to help them get their work done. And I've been working in API partnerships for about 10 years now, and looking forward to the discussion today.
Excellent. And Amanda.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Groves. I head up product marketing at Crossbeam, which is a partner ecosystem platform. I lead the go-to-market function there across Crossbeam's platform and also our partner integration side of the house.
Thank you. And last but not least, Kabir.
Thanks, Christina, and hey, everyone. I'm Kabir. I am the Director of Product Partnerships at Typeform. If you're not familiar with Typeform, we make beautiful, engaging forms for the web and mobile. We make the chore of collecting data a little bit more engaging. What I do in my role here is I oversee both the product and the business development side of our tech partnerships. We have over 150 tech partners at this point, so my team and I are both starting the conversations with these partners and then seeing those through to the go-to-market function. So yeah, really excited to be talking about this topic and learning from the other panelists here.
Excellent. So we got some good folks in here. And again, attendees, if you guys have questions, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A feature here on Zoom. So let's go ahead and get started with a real kind of high-level question. How should organizations decide what framework or matrix to use when prioritizing product integrations? Chris, I see you on mute, or Rich, either one.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm happy to kind of kick this one off. So I think this is like a pretty unique decision for every organization. I wouldn't say there's kind of a framework as such. And I don't think it's one size fits all. It'll be dependent on your strategy, on your product. I think like 3 questions that are helpful to ask are like, what are our customers asking for? I think that's usually a very good signal. I think have a look at your own product and product suite and see what gaps you have and what other products might complement those gaps. But again, it's going to be pretty unique, I feel, for each organization.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I can speak about Gorgias, and just to give some context to orient the audience on where I'll be coming from. So Gorgias, we're primarily, SMB, SaaS, the customers we're working with are retail brands, probably doing less than 100 million in GMV, just to kind of orient you where I'm coming from. So with us, when we started about 5 years ago, we quickly started, like any good company, to listen to what our customers were asking for in terms of popular integrations. So the Yotpos, Klaviyo's of the world, we built those out natively. And then once we got to a certain point where our API had matured enough and we started to be able to have dedicated people in a role to build developer toolkits and platforms, then all of a sudden we switched our attention to, okay, instead of building everything internally, let's enable partners to build into us. And when you do that is obviously a key decision to make. You need to make sure that you're set up on your API side of things where it's going to be a smooth experience for developers, But importantly, you also need to make sure that you're set up to have the bandwidth to actually support developers, because it's unlikely that you're going to be so turnkey that people are going to be able to build into you with no frictions or feedback. So you need to make sure that you're set up both to have a clean API and to be able to build into you, but also to be able to support partners while they're building into you.
Yeah, Kabir, go ahead.
Yeah, I can just add on to that. So just to echo what Richard is saying, I think it is a very it's a decision that's going to change a little bit based on your organization and what your priorities are. But I think the key thing is to build some type of prioritization framework. And we've done that at Typeform, right? And that's where you inject the variables that are unique to your organization, to the strategy for your company for the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years. So at Typeform, for example, we look at, what is the ICP of this company that we're working with? Do we have customer overlap? What types of customers are these? Are they SMB focused? Are they enterprise focused? What verticals do they represent? Do these match with where our strategy lies? And then there are some factors that are a bit harder to quantify, but I think are also very important. Like, what is the level of engagement that this partner has with you, right? I mean, you could be looking at a huge ecosystem, but if it's going to be like one of those turnkey processes where you're not really talking to anyone and you're just submitting your app for approval, is that really where you should be investing your time versus maybe a smaller partner that's willing to go market, co-sell with you? So I think there are a few different factors like that. I would highly recommend that folks try to build a Google Sheet with all of these variables in there and then rank their partners. And that's how you go about your prioritization process. At least that's what we do at Typeform.
Yeah, and I think that actually leads into another question here really well, which is how do you balance the go-to-market value of an integration partnership against the value the integration adds to the product itself? And I think, Kabir, you're kind of touching on that, like the commercial value versus the feature value. I'd love to hear more.
So I can continue. I would say the two go hand in hand, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to create commercial value one way or another. It doesn't always have to be, at least at Typeform, we don't always look at integrations as a way to acquire new customers. We see integrations as a huge retention driver for us as well. And we've talked to a lot of other partners that we work with, and they think in a very similar way. So that also translates to commercial value. If you are able to retain your customers for longer, that's obviously good for the business. So to me, those two things go hand in hand. We don't really differentiate, but we do look at the various stages of the partnership process. So building the integration, what is the complexity that goes into it versus the go-to-market process, how engaged, what I was saying earlier, how engaged is a partner on that front, and what sort of activities are they committing to in order to promote this integration once it's scoped out and built.
It's going to happen. I totally agree with that. I think they're definitely inextricably linked. At Crossbeam, we are using Crossbeam, drink your own champagne, to identify where we have mutual overlaps, to identify that market potential. But most importantly, also, we want to make sure the integrations that we're building have like a demonstrable impact on the end user experience. If we don't see that in very solid use cases, it's just not worth our time to invest at the time. We'll let it kind of marinate a bit and build out in market maturity, but we definitely want to have those strong end user performance use cases built out, just so we have a bigger impact at the end of the day when we're ready to do go-to-market with our joint partner.
I would I'd maybe add as well, the go-to-market piece of this is incredibly complex, and it can be very hard to make assumptions around like what level of activity and awareness you're going to be able to drive at the end of that program. And you've a lot more control over that kind of user experience and product experience. So totally agree with everyone else. They need to go hand in hand. I do feel if you kind of under-index on the product piece, though, you could be setting yourself up for failure, right? Because if you have a very successful launch and you drive a lot of activity to whatever you've built, and then the experience is suboptimal, you're just going to end up kind of creating problems for yourself and everyone else down the road.
Yeah, just to finish this one up, internally at Gorgias, we're trying to balance, of course, business objectives up against value enhancement for our users. So if you imagine an XY curve, we're trying to find one at the top right of that axis where there's max value and max commercial opportunity. Like Kabir had said, it's not always the one with the biggest commercial opportunity that you're necessarily going to prioritize. So we consider that. And to Rich's point around the go-to-market, we've learned our lessons, so to speak, on being a little bit careful on overcommitting the full 9 yards on every single integration that we want to go to market with. Depending on the size of the partnership and the customer demand, we have kind of like a snowball effect approach where there's a set amount of resources that we're going to engage in with the partner to drive awareness both externally, whether it's a joint product webinar, and then also importantly internally, enabling our customer facing reps to be educated on it. And then as we start to see momentum around integration adoption and commercial activity picking up, then that's when we'll start to advance to the more mature stages of our go-to-market strategy. So we've started to really adopt that approach, and it's really made a huge impact on us conserving precious resources as opposed to just giving it away every single time we want to go to market with somebody.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm really glad that you were able to join this panel. Candidly, I've seen how you guys do some of this prioritization. I think you do a really great job with driving, really highlighting like commercial value for these apps. I'm really glad that you're here to talk through some of this. With that in mind, to kind of extend this, do you guys believe there are vanity metrics in tech partnerships or places where organizations are spending like too much time and too much focus on prioritizing different apps?
One thing I'll say real quick, and I'll pass it to the panel just to put a spin on it, is one thing I see is you'll look at, okay, what's the TAM, the total addressable market of one of your partners? You'll see, okay, what's our ICP overlap with them? Oh, look, they have thousands of customers that fit our fit. If we just build an integration, we're going to be able to somehow capture them all, right? I feel like that's a misguided approach. I think to Rich's point and to the rest of the panel's point, if the value of integrating your products is so significant and the commercial opportunity is great, then obviously that's worthwhile pursuit. But we see time and time again, and we've been guilty of it in the past as well, where you're almost like looking for an integration to be built. You're like forcing use cases that don't really move the needle that much, just so you can say you have an integration that makes the partnership more marketable. So you know, the TAM of a partnership is a vanity metric I see used, and we've been guilty of that as well.
That's exactly the one I was going to mention too. So I'm glad you mentioned it, Chris. I've seen TAM mentioned quite a few times, and yeah, it obviously doesn't tell the full picture, right? If you can segment the TAM into smaller pieces that are more digestible, and this, again, to me, everything goes back to partner engagement. There has to be a viable channel for you to be able to capture a meaningful amount of that TAM. It's not the type of scenario where you build it and they will come. I mean, I'm sure that happens in some cases, but you know, in most cases, you have to have a plan, and that involves the partner in order to figure out exactly how you capture that segment.
I might build on that a little bit. Totally agree that TAM is really hard to kind of articulate correctly. I think it's less about vanity metrics and more about trying to invent new metrics that try and show the partnership in a different light. I think that should be avoided wherever possible. I think you should hold yourself accountable to like sticking to core business and core product metrics. If you think about ecosystems, they're usually there to help support the core products to some extent. So like keep it simple, focus on customer satisfaction, focus on churn reduction, focus on growth and engagement, and don't try and get too fancy and try and articulate something that new.
One thing that, and I appreciate the call outs of the total addressable market vanity metric. I've seen that in previous orgs. One that I think some can fall into this trap is after you've done go to market for a joint integration, looking at number of installs solely as the measuring point of success I think there's far more that can be gleaned after, the end user has adopted, activated the integration. How do you define activation, and how is the integration influencing the bigger metrics like retention or NPS? Because we know the more integrations that you're putting out into market can inherently improve your retention rate, which is something that we're striving for across SaaS businesses.
Yeah, that's a great point. Real quick there, Amanda. That's something that we're candidly, struggling with and trying to move towards is, okay, we know exactly how many of our users are, have turned on a specific integration. That's a nice number for sure. But, what's the main value being driven from that? That's a little bit harder to capture. And so we're trying to build out a better infrastructure to actually assess. Like, we're a ticketing-based help desk, right? So like, okay, like what's the uptick in tickets? And what's the impact on better resolution and better CSAT that we're better able to enable by having more of these integrations turned on? So that's definitely a great point there.
Yeah, to follow on to that too, I think great point, Amanda. It's interesting to see how integrations can also unlock more usage of certain parts of an app, like maybe, a feature wasn't really well adopted until it had more source data, things of that nature. And those can be hard to kind of draw direct lines to unless you have a really large data set. But it is something that we see out in market, sort of the unintended benefits of some of these things go beyond, to your point, Amanda, just the installation. It's like, oh, what else are these users doing now as a result of having that interoperability? So to kind of go with the same idea, how can sharing account data with your partners help you guys prioritize integrations? So that we were talking about the TAM. I know we've got someone from Crossbeam here. I think we have some Crossbeam users. Curious how you guys have seen that be successful in prioritizing these projects. Chris?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in. So actually I have a Crossbeam webinar later this week with Amanda and Jasmine from their team. So excited to dig deep into that. But for us, having that data allows us to make decisions a lot faster. So from an efficiency standpoint, it's been pretty incredible. So I mentioned, I used TAM as a vanity metric to avoid. So I'm kind of sounding like a hypocrite here. But it's definitely something you need to consider in terms of sizing up the opportunity. So it's not uncommon for potential developer partners to reach out to us and they say, hey, we want an integration, maybe we want you to build it, maybe we're going to build it. And one of the first things I do is I say, okay, let's jump on a call, let's discuss use cases, customer demand, but then also let's jump on Crossbeam and then map this thing out, right? Looking first at, okay, how many mutual customers do we have, showing that we're playing in the same sandbox, and then what's the TAM for the partnership, for both them and for us. And then if it's check, product value add, lots of mutual customers demanding it, and also the TAM is significant, then that allows us to really move fast and making a decision.
Yeah, I can hop in here too. Definitely a big fan of Crossbeam. Just thinking on my own career, I've worn several marketing hats, and product marketing definitely being the most fun. And running go-to-market for especially integrations is really tricky when you're trying to evidence the value using spreadsheets and disparate systems. So coming to learn about innovative technology like Crossbeam, it makes it so much helpful to get to value fast and validate not only the market opportunity, but just across all the customer lifecycle stages. So depending on where your ecosystem is, warming up prospects with certain co-marketing plays there, and just helping again to nurture and shorten deal stages just because you have that information just organized in a secure place. And a system like Crossbeam has been very, very powerful. So that's been great. Also, I think not only overlaps, but going a bit deeper and identifying overlaps in specific verticals and tweaking the integration use cases by those verticals that you're exploring has been something we've been looking more closely at, and we've been hearing has been very helpful from our customer base as well.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I would say, even though a Crossbeam analysis could be considered TAM, to me, it's a qualified segment of the TAM, right? This is a potentially captive audience if you figure out that you have mutual customers in common, and there are various ways to activate against that. You could send out a newsletter or blast to these folks once the integration is built. You could even poll them in advance of the integration being built to understand exactly what their use case is, to Richard's point earlier, to ensure that you're over-indexing on the product side and building something that's really valuable. And in addition, if you have a sales team, at Typeform, we're only now launching our enterprise sales motion. You can also map your prospects and have the partner map their prospects, and then you can make warm intros and so on, and that also enables additional deal flow. So we use it as a very, very valuable insight and a key data point in our prioritization framework when figuring out how many resources to allocate to a particular partnership.
Excuse me. So we actually have a couple of really good questions coming in, and there's some themes here. So I think maybe we'll jump over to some of the audience questions. And if we run out, we can go back to some of the previously sent in ones. This is a topic that I love, so selfishly, I'm going to select it. What are some successful ways that you've worked with product management and engineering to bring integrations to life? And conversely, what are some anti-patterns to avoid in that working relationship?
I'm happy to volunteer a few things on that point. I mean, just like get to understand your PM and engineering teams and what their goals are, and help them understand how these integrations can help. Ultimately, these teams are very busy. They have limited capacity. They want to work on things that are going to move the business in the right direction. So you can kind of help educate them from that perspective. I think make it easy for them. Like let them consume data in the way that they want. Don't make it something else they have to do. Try and add it into existing processes where possible. I think also assume it's going to be an ongoing process. You're not going to have one meeting and all of a sudden everything is going to work well. Assume it's an area you're going to have to invest in. And I think the more you can get engineers talking to engineers and PMs talking to PMs at your partners, it's going to build up that sense of empathy a little faster.
Yeah, and sorry, Christina. Yeah, one thing to add there is, and to echo Richard's point, like really understanding the bandwidth that your developer relations team, product, and engineers have. I think a lot of sales and success reps, they'll say, "Hey, Chris, we want this new integration. Can we get that shipped by next week?" And I'm like, "Nope," right? And so understanding the actual process. The bandwidth that your teams have. And then I would also say, because we're more on the commercial biz dev side of things, showcasing to our product and engineering team the success and triumphs that we're having based on their hard efforts. It's like, look, we were able to ship this new integration. We were able to see an ARR uplift of XYZ because of that. And it's a big buzz in the industry right now. Not just having them do all the hard work and then not being made aware of the success that comes with it has been really helpful. And it certainly makes it easier to motivate them and get buy-in from them for more aggressive asks in the future.
One thing to add on this one before we move on is from a product marketing perspective, working with product teams, particularly having just no questions about what is the difference between dev complete and market readiness. And that may change based on the nature of if it's just like a platform feature or an integration. Did you decide that you need to have a certain period of beta accessibility? And like, what does success look like for this integration? And just having that alignment so okay, this is what we've flagged as development complete. And now I'm ready as a marketer, product marketing, to promote from a go-to-market perspective and general availability. So just having that alignment very clear early and often in the development cycle has been really helpful for me, not only at Crossbeam, but at other organizations.
Yeah, to follow on to what Chris and Amanda said, I think because partnerships and technology integrations are so cross-departmental, I think celebrating the wins like really loud and proud when it's the launch, when it's the installation, when it's the ARR uplift or the customer that's really stoked, can be a really great lever to get product and engineering teams excited about building something. These apps are like little features in themselves, so to speak, in a lot of ways. So I think it's really exciting, and the folks that we work with that have done this well have a culture of really celebrating the win for the partnership, not just on the biz dev side, but throughout the entire org. Cool. So we have a couple of questions that are related to convincing other organizations to build into your own API. And someone was asked specifically about balancing the need to build native integrations versus developer support. And then someone else asked specifically, how do you encourage or convince others to build into your platform, which is a popular topic as I think companies switch from, being SaaS to being a platform that everyone can interact with. So Chris, I saw you unmute. I'm sure you have some thoughts here.
Sure. So yes, and I also see a question from Sai in the chat about what was an inflection point for us. Really, as I said at the beginning, in the beginning of our journey, we started based on customer demand, shipping native integrations, and then based on our bandwidth, to be able to ship maybe say 1 to 2 major ones a quarter. Let's say once we started having a lot more demand for integrations that we couldn't prioritize on our immediate roadmap, then we switched to say, okay, we need to build out a robust developer ecosystem to attract partners, really get our API documentation more mature. And then also on top of that, we need to have a pretty robust go-to-market strategy to convey the value that partners can expect once they do build into us. And so it was a big challenge, and we're still not perfect at this yet. Maturing our developer partner ecosystem at the same rate in which we're developing our commercial go-to-market part of the puzzle, but that's been really key to us as well. It's just being able to offer so much value in return to partners once they do build into us.
I can speak briefly to this. So in terms of the question of whether or when to invest in a developer ecosystem, I think I would take a very customer-centric approach to this actually, rather than a partner-centric approach. At Typeform, it's really interesting. We actually have our webhooks are in the top 5 most used integrations. So that means it's not a packaged integration that's being used by customers. So they're sending data from Typeform to some external system that we don't natively integrate with. If you start to see demand like that come up from your customers, it's probably a pretty strong signal. There's a lot of other things you need to assess too, but that's, to me, would be a very strong signal that you probably need to start investing in some APIs, because not only will your partners be able to build at that point, but your customers can also explore use cases that maybe your product team has not thought of natively. So that's one way that I would think about it.
And Amanda, to call you out, just because you guys just did your, not just, but within the last year, I think announced your partner API. I'm curious what your kind of thoughts are as you guys have transitioned into that realm.
Yeah, so I was here I joined Crossbeam right before the release of the Partner Cloud, our brand new marketplace that launched in May. And it's been really exciting to just have not only all of our partners go to market with us at the time of that launch, but just the inbound requests from other partner technology companies that are now able to easily get up and running and take stake in what's out there and build just much faster than formerly was available. So it's been really great. I would say from a go-to-market velocity standpoint, we are very busy on the product marketing side. We're releasing integrations pretty much one a week with no signs of slowing down. So it's been pretty remarkable, and just also a testament to what our customers are interested in, and people are very excited about what we've been able to bring to market so far, and have been requesting more and more integrations just on the heels of that marketplace announcement in May.
Hey, Matt, I might just add to that as well and say, if you're going to do it, like, invest in it properly, make sure developer experience is ready to support people, make sure you're collecting 360 feedback from developers and partners and are ready to execute against it quickly. And don't underestimate ecosystem marketing. I think they have like a really valuable role to play here in making people understand how they should be building and how they can be building. So you need all of those functions there as well if you're really going to execute correctly, I think.
I'm curious, Richard, what you sort of seen be successful as the mechanism to gather some of that feedback. I mean, you can obviously see if people aren't building into you, that might be a problem, or there's always folks that will, send emails to support. But given your experience, have you seen any tactics to gather that sort of feedback effectively?
Yeah, I think surveys are great to get the breadth of coverage that you want, and also it lets you, have a look at trends over time across that broad population. having a council of folks that you bring in, that's a good cross selection of the different people who are developing, big, small, enterprise, SMB. There's nothing quite like getting a few folks in a room or on a Zoom call for 2 hours to like get the real visceral feedback that is going to help internal teams take action. And you're never going to get that kind of qualitative or that kind of emotional response out of a survey. So I think you should combine them both where possible.
I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on that one. I was genuinely curious. Cool. So let's take one more of the pre-submitted questions, and then I'll jump back over to the audience. So have you guys seen be the most effective ways for organizations to support the long tail of deprioritized integrations, whether those are partner built or you're doing something like with Zapier or built in-house? How do you kind of stay on top of those and manage that, the end of the roadmap?
I think it's just making sure that you're tracking the, ideally growing customer demand for them. So if we've made the hard decision of we're not going to commit to building something and the partner doesn't have bandwidth as well, that's okay. Like, let's not just forget about it entirely. Let's, set a 6-month touch point down the road to reassess and say, take a look at if there has been an increase in customer demand. Sometimes maybe there's a missing endpoint that is blocking the integration from being built out in the first place. So once that does become available, then all of a sudden we can reignite those conversations. And for us, and this is definitely a plug for our friends at Pandium, in some cases we say, okay, we can't build it, our partners can't build it. But if there's enough of a value add and a commercial opportunity here, then why not go ahead and work with a partner like Pandium who can, fill that need right away. And Pandium's definitely proven time and time again to be a great partner in that regard.
Thank you. I'm also curious to follow into that too. Like, how do you keep track of those requests like that are coming in through sales, especially, and CS, I guess? Is that something that you guys throw into your CRM? What mechanism do you use to track that?
So we use a tool called Product Board here at Gorgias. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it. So we have a public roadmap that anyone can see and contribute insights to. We also have a property in our CRM where, say we lost a deal, or say a customer has requested something, we can just input that text and it will automatically upload into Product Board. We also have a Product Board extension, which makes it really easy as well. And so I use that a lot for scoping out new integrations based on customer demand, and it also makes it easy to track over time. It's like, oh, look, in the last 3 months, we've seen a big uptick in requests for this specific integration. And it also captures a lot of the use cases, which makes building scopes a lot easier.
Anyone else have thoughts there on the long tail and how to handle it? Richard, I see you on mute.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is all about building systems. So how can you stop being reactive and be proactive with a large cohort? So like, are your communication systems working? How are you providing these folks insights that help them kind of build better and higher quality integrations? Are the right self-service and support systems there? Go to market at scale can be challenging, but what kind of help can you provide to that long tail of developers? And this is like an area that folks can get to be creative and can always be kind of ideating and evolving around, because it's definitely a challenge.
And I'm also thinking through this to myself, like how much of that prioritization is done in your experience within the partnership part of the org versus actually like the product part of the org kind of driving some of that? Or does it depend?
Yeah, I think it depends on like where you are in your kind of ecosystem journey, right? Are you very early where you're going to be working a lot closer with product teams on kind of core use cases? Or are you a lot further down the road where the API and the ecosystem is kind of a thing all of itself, and you can kind of be slightly more disconnected? Like ultimately the through line there is going to be customers and kind of what they're asking you for and what their feedback is. So yeah, it can change based on where you're at.
And I don't know, Amanda, Kabir, if you guys have thoughts on that too. I feel like these exercises sort of sit in a lot of different parts of an organization.
Yeah, on the long tail integrations, I'll say at Typeform, we like working with sort of these connector apps like Zapier, Automate.io, Integromat. We've built connectors to them or they have built using our APIs. And to Chris's point earlier, it's a great way to capture intent. And it's also a great way to offload that long tail of integrations to an external partner. So I think that's a very smart strategy, especially for smaller companies. That would be one of the first integrations that I invest in if I were at a smaller company, right? Build a Zapier connector, list a whole bunch of use cases that you think might be relevant to your customers, and then use that as a way to gauge intent. The ones that are falling towards the bottom of the list, maybe you just leave them there and let Zapier manage that moving forward. That's one way to think about it.
For me, it would just be echoing like all of the sentiments that were already shared. Like I certainly have flavors of agreement with the panelists that already spoke on the subject, but definitely like on the long tail of deprioritize integrations. It's one of those economic responses of it depends. It's hard. It's helpful to have an open API that allows deprioritized integrations to be built by partners, and you can slate them in the marketplace. I think at Crossbeam, we have the philosophy that partner build is the best way for our partners to get their integration prioritized. We want to support the partners as they do, even if it's a low priority, so we can end up with something that is valuable that we're investing with over time. If it's deprioritized and the partner isn't able to just put investment in to get it built, it's just not going to be valuable enough to pay to have it built by us. So we'll consider potentially a contractor or an iPaaS. Yeah, with so many SaaS companies, if you're just funneling integrations through an iPaaS and partners aren't building, it just may just continue to be at the bottom of the pile. So that'd be difficult.
Too many pieces of software, too little time. Cool. We are just, I believe, right at time here. Thanks everyone for submitting questions, really strong themes across them, which is really cool. Really appreciate the panelists for taking the time. I know you guys are really busy, so thank you so much for sharing your insights. I hope this was helpful to everybody. And we can continue the conversation in the SaaS Ecosystem Alliance Slack. If you're not already a member, it's saasecosystemalliance.com, and you can register for our Slack channel there. And yeah, really appreciate everybody taking the time. I'm sure I'll see you guys on Slack and looking forward to staying in touch.